Hi, Lori. That candle isn't gonna light anymore. Hola, mi-san. Good evening to you. Hi, Wilkie. Haven't seen you around here for a while. How are you guys doing? It's very chilly and rainy and cold in Seattle today. But it's supposed to get nicer, I think. Last time I checked, it wasn't supposed to rain for most of the week next week, which would be nice. Hi, Jade. So, I'm kind of like moving. I realized that our state is moving into phase 2 on June 1st of the quarantine during this ongoing pandemic. So there's lots of things that will remain the same. Hi, Lori. But there's some things that are changing. I go to the Hatha Yoga Center in the U District regularly to live stream my classes, and things are starting to feel more normal in the U District. There's more people on the streets, more cars. I mean, it's still quiet by normal standards, but there's definitely a sense that things are starting to change, to shift. I'm pretty much still staying home myself, Wilkie. Just with a few exceptions. But so I feel like, remember when we started doing this and it was like completely new to us and we were like really nervous and anxious about what was going to happen, and we felt really scared about getting sick. And so, and remember at the beginning, and maybe it's still this way for you, but how we felt every day like we might be getting COVID, because we'd have like a little scratchy throat, or we'd have some allergy symptoms, sneezing or something. And then that kind of, I'm speaking from my own experience, but I kind of felt like other people were having those experiences too. And, some people got sick and some people are still getting sick, and we're not done with this by any means, but there's like a shift in our consciousness to some degree about all of this. There's still the fear of getting sick for sure. This week, one day I felt a little tickle in my throat, and then I felt weird all day. I think it was like Wednesday. I felt pretty sure like, oh my gosh, I'm getting sick. And I dropped into that kind of reality again about how scary the virus is, and went down a whole mental path with it. I allowed myself to go down a whole mental path with it. And then, I've had pretty bad seasonal allergies this year, and I woke up the next day and I felt fine. I still felt a little funny, but like I totally realized I haven't been taking my allergy medicine for a couple weeks, and I totally realized, that I was having an allergy attack, and now, it ended and my symptoms went away. But I think we're going to be living with this reality for a while, but we're still kind of, we're kind of shifting into a different state with it, where we're more used to it and we're coping with it differently, perhaps. And so I think what I want to put in front of you, since I'm figuring that I'm going to do this meditation every night until the last day of May, so for 10 more nights, and then I'm going to switch to once a week. But what I just want to put out there is like, what are some of the things that you've learned about yourself during this time, or new habits that you've acquired, or beneficial ways of thinking or living that you want to pull forward with you into phase 2? Knowing that we may drop back into phase 1, or we may have to quarantine again, that this is an ongoing situation, but also feeling like we've made it through something. And particularly those of us who've been practicing meditation regularly. Oh, good, Wilkie. Wilkie's going to get antibodies checked. Oh, good, Lori's got sound. So that's just something to put out there, and maybe to think about if you're going to stick with this meditation for the next 10 nights, or even for a couple of them. Kind of like, I think in meditation we're trying to cultivate like mental states that are beneficial for us, and abandon mental states that are not beneficial. Like, we're working on this long-term project, and this quarantine time has given us a chance to observe ourselves in a new way, perhaps, particularly through practice and awareness of our mental states. And so I guess I'm just encouraging you to stick with that, and to think about what you've been cultivating during this time that you'd like to bring forward with you. So with that in mind, let's come into our meditation position. The position that we're going to put our bodies into tonight for our meditation. So I'll be sitting. I sit every night, but I'm sitting on a cushion, and you might be doing that as well, or you might be coming onto your back. Originally, when I started doing this, it was with the intention of helping people to relax, perhaps, or come into a deeper state of relaxation because of all of the fear and worry. And that's certainly still an intention. And that's why and also a lot of people were having trouble sleeping, or complaining about that. And so I thought maybe like a wind down at the end of the day would be helpful. So that was kind of how it got started. So just bringing yourself perhaps onto your back, and finding your restful spot where you can let your mind rest and relax. I also think it's really, really important, if we're going to get anywhere with our practice, that we learn how to relax our nervous system and how to relax our body and bring ourselves into greater states of calm. And that gives us the ability to be more present with ourselves. I always hear that cliche expression about if you can't love yourself, how can you love anyone else? And it's kind of become such a cliche expression that it's sort of lost some of its meaning. But I think one thing that meditation and mindfulness can do is it can help us to cultivate not just love for ourselves, but to cultivate like a real intimate relationship with ourselves, which then allows us to have better, more intimate relationships with other people in our lives. So by now you're probably on your back or in your seat, in your position where you're going to stay. So bringing perhaps a pillow and putting it underneath your head and neck. Maybe you're covering your eyes or putting a blanket over yourself. It's a blanket-worthy day here in Seattle. So just setting yourself up so that you can have a nice, comfortable experience where you're not distracted by being cold or uncomfortable. And bringing your body into a place where you can stay for 15 or 20 minutes without feeling like your arms falling asleep or your bones poking into the floor and it's really annoying or anything like that. And you might arrange yourself too so that if you notice there's any kind of twistedness or asymmetry in your body, that you can even out easily. Like one thing might be, if you're laying back, that your head could be kind of tilted, or which would lead to some contraction on one side of the neck. So you might try to just straighten your head out a little. My head has a little bit of a tilt normally, and I've been kind of, observing that and working on it for a long time. Sometimes when we have those asymmetries in our body, we can't just totally correct it all the way back to symmetrical without causing harm. So just noticing in your body if there's anywhere where you can gently coax yourself back to symmetry. And hi, Steve. And then just allowing yourself to surrender in that position that you're in. So feeling the heaviness of your body being held by gravity. I've been talking about gravity a lot and how gravity is such a predictable force. And then today I listened to a podcast about the Alaska earthquake. And I guess it was in the 70s in Anchorage, the really big earthquake that went on. And I thought, wow, having an earthquake would really challenge your perceptions of the stable nature of gravity. So, but we don't really need to worry about that. So you can pretty much count on gravity. So let yourself be in relationship with gravity. Let gravity really hold you down without any concern of the earth moving underneath you. And you might close your eyes or cover your eyes. And then begin to bring the awareness to your breath. So first, just with a sense of curiosity, checking in with your breath. See if you can do it without putting a lot of words to it in your mind, but rather feeling the breath, sensing the breath. Those might be two different things, feeling and sensing. But just noticing it without changing it a lot or trying to explain it to yourself. So noticing what the inhale feels like and what the exhale feels like. And as you're feeling the breath, you might begin to then kind of coax your breath to be a little bit, maybe not deeper in the sense that you're trying to pull more air in, but a more complete experience of your breath. So feeling the breath more completely and allowing the breath to kind of fill up your body more completely. So relaxing your back against the floor and feeling the breath in the back of your body. Sometimes we feel our breath like in our chest or in the front of the chest, or sometimes up here in the top of our chest. So see if you can bring the experience of it deeper into your lungs. Imagining your lungs come right up underneath your collarbones and then they come down pretty deep underneath the rib cage. You might feel it in the sides of your rib cage. Feel the breath. So not just in the front and back, but in the sides. Feeling how there's a certain resistance around the rib cage. So see if you can soften that, perhaps by relaxing a little bit more deeply against the floor, letting the back of your rib cage really surrender to the floor and feel all of the parts of your back ribs against the floor. By imagining the muscle tissue and the connective tissue that knits your ribs together, by imagining that softening and releasing, by imagining a widening in the front of your collarbones and your chest and all of these muscles that get shortened and contracted as we go through our day because we're rounding forward quite a bit on our devices, or maybe because it's cold, or because we feel like we're protecting ourselves, or we just have habits where our heads come forward. So see if you can open that up. And here you don't have to worry about your head because your head's against the floor. The floor is supporting your head. And your head is pretty heavy. Your head weighs, I don't know, somewhere around 15. Oh, God, excuse me. So sorry. Your head weighs something like 15 pounds, I think. Maybe, give or take 3 or 4 pounds on each side. So when your head comes forward, even just a centimeter, it's a huge strain on the neck and shoulders. So here on your back, you can just feel how the head is totally released and your neck and shoulders can soften and not bear the weight of the head. So taking advantage of that. And especially if you have something under your neck to support the neck, then you can really let go of all of that tension up in your shoulders and neck. And then feeling how the breath, as it comes in, there's like a rise and fall of your chest and your belly with the breath. Kind of like a wave coming in and going back out. So let your breath be like waves. Let it be rolling in and rolling out of your body. And almost like you would if you were to go to the beach on a vacation, and you set up your chair and you sit there and you literally are watching the waves coming in and going back out. I think most of us have done that. We know how relaxing it is. You're not really talking, you're just, maybe you have your drink and your hat on and you're just staring off into the ocean. You can kind of imagine that as what you're doing with your breath. You're just watching the waves. And you might be able to hear your breath. If your house is quiet, you might be able to hear just a soft sound of the breath. And so as you practice and as you become quieter, you might notice that there are things coming up in your mind. It's not just your breath. You'll notice thoughts and feelings and sensations, or thoughts about feelings or thoughts about sensations that arise. And they also they kind of come rolling in and then they kind of go rolling out. Kind of like your breath. And you can perhaps play around in those thought waves. You can entertain them. But you might begin to just detach yourself a bit from them, from the experience of those thoughts. Noticing how sometimes those thoughts also create a response in your body. A quickening of your heart, or a change in the breath, maybe a stiffening of your muscles or body. Sometimes for me, because I'm super distractible, when I'm meditating or in a guided meditation or in any situation where I'm trying to be meditative, I will get so pulled off by a distracted thought that I just have to get up out of it and go do something. And I've gotten much better at noticing that and letting it subside, but it's a challenge. Meditation is a challenge, especially when you're first starting. So noticing the impulse to move your body, if that's happening. It's kind of like it's like a craving, like a impulsive, like you want to react to it, you want to do it, you want to get up, you want to move, you want to go take care of something that's pressing, you want to, whatever it is. But instead of thinking about it a lot and getting up and doing it, instead you're just allowing it to kind of recede like the waves. You know that it will go away. And the more that you entertain these kinds of impulses and cravings, they kind of thrive on you thinking more about them. So rather than reacting, see if you can respond by letting that recede again, that thought or that feeling that's pulling on you, that impulse, that craving, that whatever it is. So you're breathing through with your inhale and your exhale, rolling in and out. You can see a little bit more clearly the nature of your own mind because you're kind of like a spectator. You're watching. And this allows you to respond rather than to react. And so in this meditation where you're on your back and you're being talked through it, your response could be to come back to my voice. It could be to come back to your breath. It could be just to tell yourself to stay, rather than to react to the thought. And for me, that thought's often about taking action, an action I need to take in the immediate, right in the moment. And you might experience that on a smaller level. Like there might be, I'm quite fidgety, so I don't like sitting still a whole lot. I'm a move kind of person. So I find myself often like, well, I have an itch on my face and I really need to itch it. I need to move my hand up and itch my, whatever. And you might have that too. And sometimes you might decide that that's a good idea because maybe there's like an ant crawling on your face or something. But it also might just be like a habitual pattern of behavior that you have, that you can see like, oh, that itch that's on my face actually goes away. If I just stay with it for a few breaths, it just dissipates. So responding, you're learning how to respond in the present moment. So it kind of goes back to the concept again of cultivating mental states that are beneficial and abandoning mental states that are not beneficial. And I bet that you don't have to even pause in the attempt to come up for yourself with what are mental states that are not beneficial for you. So, anxiety is a good example of a mental state that can be not beneficial. Sometimes it's beneficial because it helps us to take action when we need to, but often it's perseverating and it's like obsessive thinking, repeating the same thought over and over again. So we're learning how to cultivate the ability to respond rather than react. And so bringing yourself back to your breath right now in the present moment, feeling your breath coming in and out through your nose. And noticing as I've been talking what has come up for you and how you've stayed in your meditative position that you chose, and you're still breathing. You probably didn't get up and go into the kitchen and get a cookie or, hi, Missy. Whatever that craving or that thought habit or whatever it was that came up, you probably were able to stay and breathe through. So just noticing. And then again, in your practice, making contact with everything that comes up. So obviously, as human beings, we are programmed to seek out pleasure and to avoid pain. And there's good reasons for those things. I mean, if you've had a child, you know, the first thing they do is they start looking for sweet milk to nourish their body. And that's pleasurable. And so they get their needs met, right? And when you're coming up in the world and learning about the world, you experience pain when you do things like touch a hot stove. You learn not to touch the stove. You know, there's lots of good reasons for these things, but we can also become so avoidant of pain and so seeking of pleasure that it becomes a problem for us. So noticing all the stuff that comes up during your practice. You're practicing staying with it. You're practicing staying with discomfort, possibly even with pain. Not so much with physical pain. If you feel physical pain, you might want to move around. And like right now I'm sitting on my foot and it's starting to fall asleep. That's not desirable. But there's a lot of emotional pain that can arise during practice. So, especially in the early parts of practice, I think. When I first started practicing meditation and yoga, it was like the first time in my life where I had really, really quieted myself down and started paying attention. And I cried a lot, particularly in certain situations. And I found it kind of annoying sometimes, and I found it kind of scary sometimes, but it also was an opportunity for me to truly go deeper and face a lot of stuff that was happening underneath the surface. So, coming back to your breath, noticing if there's anywhere in your own body where you feel discomfort or pain that you can work with. You can either stay with it or you can do something about it that is not taking you out of your practice. So you're not getting up necessarily. You're staying with it. You know, and getting up and leaving is an option too. There are very strong emotions that can arise, and when you're in your practice, when you're meditating, you can always, if things get too intense, especially if you've experienced trauma, which most of us have, you can get up and walk it out and leave. So I shouldn't say don't leave, but you could also experiment with staying with it and working on various techniques to cultivate beneficial mind states around whatever it is. So it's kind of like you're being unconditional with yourself. That expression, like if you can't love yourself, you can't love other people. Maybe changing that to be more like being in pursuit of having an unconditional and complex intimate relationship with ourselves so that we can have complex and intimate relationships with others. So being present with all that comes and learning how to navigate it. Having tools to navigate it. Your breath is one of the greatest tools you have, and always at hand, always available. So practicing watching the waves roll in and out, feeling that sense of relaxation and calm inside of you that comes with that practice. Taking a sip of your imaginary beverage with your imaginary umbrella in it. On your imaginary beach, in your imaginary beach chair. And then you might start to shift towards either staying on your back or maybe moving towards coming back to your seat. I actually have a poem I want to read to you. This is a Maria Rainier Rilke poem. It's intense, but I like it. I think most of his stuff is pretty intense. You see, I want a lot. Maybe I want it all. The darkness of each endless fall, the shimmering light of each ascent. So many are alive who don't seem to care. Casual, easy, they move in the world as though untouched. But you take pleasure in the faces of those who know they thirst. You cherish those who grip you for survival. You are not dead yet. It's not too late to open your depths by plunging into them and drink in the life that reveals itself quietly there. So taking a couple more breaths, plunging into your own depths to reveal the life to drink in the life that reveals itself quietly there. Feeling the gentleness of your breath and of your own inner state. And you might roll onto your side and come back up to your seat, finding your spine, or you could stay on your back. Letting yourself come back up if you're doing that, and finding your heavy seat and your spine rising up out of that, making sure to keep your head balanced on top of your shoulders, so no forward head. Opening the chest, letting your shoulder blades slide down the back of your rib cage. And if you're sitting upright, feeling the back of your body. And finding your breath here, letting it be a complete breath, a complete experience of the breath in a balanced way, inhaling and exhaling. Keeping the face and jaw relaxed. And the front of your chest wide. And then you might bring your hands together at your heart. You could bow your head to your own practice. The practice you've been cultivating. To your own inner teacher, your higher self, or your higher power. Namaste. Thank you for coming, and I'll see you tomorrow night at 9 p.m.